What if I told you that a van, rather than a Ferrari, Mustang, or Rolls-Royce, was the most significant automobile of the 20th century? A simple, functional van that transported furniture, carried bricks, and sat outside every terraced house in Britain without anyone noticing. Even the most devoted automotive historians find it hard to believe that all of this occurred in just 13 years. But beneath that conventional white bodywork lived a history so bizarre, startling, and completely unexpected. By the time we get to fact number 10, you won't be able to look at a white van in the same way, so stick with this story. Almost nothing about this Ford Transit Mk1 is what you may expect. The first shocking fact. Under the code name Project Redcap, an engineering team led by Sir Alex Trotman, who would later become the worldwide chairman and CEO of Ford Motor Company, began developing the 1965 Ford Transit. Give that some serious thought. One of the most influential automotive executives in history, the future head of the entire Ford empire, started off by assisting with the design of a delivery van. It's not a sports vehicle. Not an opulent saloon. A van. That's only half the shock, though. At the final minute, the iconic name Transit was selected instead of the previous choice name V-Series. 60 years of history would have a completely unmemorable name if a different choice had been made on a different afternoon. Somewhere, someone made a quick decision and unintentionally named a legend. The second shocking fact. The van was first manufactured at Ford's Langley facility in Berkshire, England, which had previously produced Hawker Hurricane fighters during World War II. Just over 10 years later, Britain's most vital working vehicle was born in the same plant that produced the fighter planes that protected the country during its darkest moments. On the same production floor, under the same roof, Transits replaced Hurricanes. The next bombshell was that Ford received orders totaling £33 million just months after the Transit was made public. Due to the Transit's recent changes, Bedford really had to abandon a project it was working on. It gave other vehicles on the market a dated, sluggish, and useless appearance. Arrival did not just see a decline in sales. This van caused it to give up on its own future. That is not the case. However, it did. The third shocking fact. Ford Transits are utilized in 95% of bank raids, according to the Metropolitan Police in 1972. With a car's performance and room for 1.75 tons of loot, the Transit was proving to be the ideal getaway vehicle. The police went on to call it Britain's most wanted van. Consider the implications of that. A van was officially listed by the authorities, the Metropolitan Authorities, as the most popular criminal instrument in British crime. The criminal underworld embraced Ford's invention as standard equipment since it was so powerful and precisely balanced between speed and capacity. Because of its strength, dependability, and ability to blend in with the surroundings, it was the preferred vehicle for some of the most daring robberies in contemporary British history. Criminals preferred it as a getaway van because of how well it drove. If it had the V6 under the hood, they could evade the cops and bag the booty. A functional van, surpassing police vehicles. Recorded by Scotland Yard. And we're only at fact 3. Hold on, things are about to get more bizarre. The fourth shocking fact. On Easter Monday in 1971, the first Transit supervan made its debut at Brands Hatch. The Ford GT40, the legendary sports car renowned for its winning run at Le Mans, served as the model for the Mk1 supervan. With a 5.0-litre V8 engine, it could attain a high speed of 149 miles per hour. At Le Mans, the GT40 had defeated Ferrari 4 times in a row. It was among the most esteemed racing vehicles ever constructed. And Ford took its chassis, placed it under a Transit van's pressed steel shell, fired a 5-litre V8 into the center of it, and drove the finished product onto a racetrack in front of an audience. The delivery van's body shell was a regular Transit Mk1, but it concealed an amazing secret. It was built on the chassis of a Ford GT40, equipped with a mid-mounted 5.0-litre V8 engine. A typical Transit body. 149 miles per hour with a GT40 beneath. This was not an idea. No one who witnessed this machine on Easter Monday ever forgot that it was a real, operational machine. The fifth shocking fact. Ford had to demonstrate in 1972 that the Transit's new diesel engine was truly long-lasting, not just dependable for a van, but dependable by any fair standard of measurement. Thus, Monza was their choice. The renowned racetrack in Italy. For 7 days in a row, they operated 2 transit vans there non-stop. Ford broke 3 world records by running 2 transits non-stop for a week on the Monza circuit to show off the durability and dependability of its diesel engine. One of the vehicles traveled 16,000 kilometers at an average speed of 118.6 kilometers per hour. For 7 days. No relaxation. 3 world records were shattered. A commercial delivery van that not only survived a week-long endurance test at a racetrack but also broke all previous records. As fleet managers throughout Europe observed, the Transit's hegemony solidified. Now, you should ask yourself what else this van was capable of that no one has ever informed you, given that it was able to break endurance records on a racing circuit. In actuality, 7 is the answer to that question. First, this is something that no manufacturer would ever anticipate, but it tells you exactly what this car has become. The sixth shocking fact. The London Zoo used a train to transport animals in 1965. The van was deemed capable and reliable enough to carry live animals from one of the most prominent zoological institutes in the world in the year it was introduced, which was also its first year of operation. Furthermore, the Mk1 would experience other odd deployments. By 1966, the Transit was so well-liked that bus routes in the Andes Mountains could be found at an elevation of 14,000 feet. 12 months after it was first introduced in Britain. In South America's high-altitude mountain passes, vehicles that aren't truly constructed to last are punished by the harsh terrain, bitter cold, thin air, and complete mechanical isolation. The Transit did more than just endure terrible circumstances. There, it functioned as a passenger bus. Within a year of its launch, a van designed in Berkshire and constructed on a former wartime aircraft plant was transporting passengers into the Andes at 14,000 feet. That isn't advertising. That is evidence. The seventh shocking fact. Only 1/3 of stolen transits are ever found, according to the National Vehicle Crime Intelligence Service. In 2015, the Transit was the most commonly stolen car in the UK. Every iteration of the nameplate had inherited the Transit Mk1's reputation for being alluring to thieves 50 years after it was first introduced. Decades of successors merely carried on the trend started by the crooks who initially attacked the Mk1 in the early 1970s. However, thievery is just one aspect of the situation. The other side is far more surprising, because it irrevocably ties this working van to the history of British music and culture in a way that no car manufacturer could have purposefully created. The eighth shocking fact. The Transit Mk1 swiftly emerged as the preferred vehicle for traveling support teams for up-and-coming musicians by the late 1960s and early 1970s. All of the main British bands of the time, who would go on to define rock, pop, and cultural identity for a generation, packed their gear into transit vans and traveled all across the nation at night to perform. The future of British music was being transported in the load bay of the van that was setting endurance records at Monza and stealing banks. The fact that legends are being constructed in the rear of the same car that Scotland Yard had designated as Britain's most wanted car is incredibly ironic. It also poses a challenge that no one could have addressed in 1965. How can a commercial van become so deeply ingrained in the culture of a whole country? The solution starts with a startling revelation concerning the real location of its construction. The ninth shocking fact. On October 8, 1965, the Post Office Tower in London officially opened, coinciding with the introduction of the new Transit. On the same day, 2 emblems of a modernizing Britain were displayed. One turned into a famous landmark in London. The other developed into something much more important. It became the means by which a whole country's working existence depended. Over 300,000 transits were manufactured at Langley alone between 1965 and 1973, The former Hurricane facility produced them at the same rate as it had produced fighter planes during the war. However, the demand was so great that even 300,000 units exceeded the factory's capacity, necessitating a complete relocation of manufacturing to Southampton. A van had overrun its own birthplace. The 10th shocking fact. 11 years after the first Ford Transit left that former Hurricane factory in Berkshire, the 1 millionth one was produced in Europe in 1976. 1 million units. 11 years from now. With a design that had not changed much during that whole run. The most startling aspect of that accomplishment is not the figure per se, but rather what it reveals about why the vehicle didn't require any modifications. Garages had been working on the Mk1 for 13 years by 1978. Thus, they were familiar with every component and could service them rapidly due to their ease of maintenance. It wasn't only that the vehicle sold well. The mechanics of a whole country had learned it to such an extent that it could be fixed more quickly and consistently than anything more complicated. 1 million instances of a van that served as a tool for bank robberies, a rock band's vehicle, an animal carrier for zoos, a world record holder at Monza, a passenger bus in the Andes, and a GT40-powered 149-mile-per-hour monster. All of them had the same common body and started with the same modest name that someone nearly didn't choose. The Ford Transit Mk1 never requested to be remembered. It merely wanted to be helpful. It became something far greater than any sports car, any luxury sedan, or any renowned machine that was ever intended to wow because it was completely, relentlessly, and astonishingly helpful. It was woven into the fabric of a country. And some things never come out once they are so thoroughly entwined.